Here we go. Isaiah 53:6. So I hope this video, well, I should start with prayers, so I'm going to pray. Yeshua, help me in this video to be able to make this plain and simple and clear. Help it to be plain and simple and clear for my brother, first and foremost. No, I guess I can't do that. Make it plain and simple and clear for me, and then I can make it clear for him. Because I need to hear it and do it. I need to understand it. Part of understanding is hearing. And help me to be able to use this to make things more graspable. If I can, employ pictures or metaphors, help me to get through the morass, the kind of like confusion surrounding this verse and what you did. What are we to expect? And help us to be more like you. It's my judgment. I'm talking to you, Yeshua. You're my rabbi. So I'm talking to you. You are Mashiach. And I pray you teach me, Rabbi. Asking your name. Amen. Okay. So I hate talking about the wrong way to read a passage before I talk about the passage. So I think I'm going to not do that. I'm going to just give a really quick reading, but I'm going to say that this video is going to be different because this passage is pressed into service. Are you familiar with that phrase in English when you press something into service? It's kind of like, are you familiar with the idea of compulsory duties on subjugated nations? So for example, the Romans could press anyone in the empire, whether they're Roman citizens,
to do their work.
That's right. Which is you had to go within 1 mile, carry their crap. Okay, press them into service to carry shit. I could have ascertained. That's right.
Its meaning
a little further than
forced to do.
And in that moment, you're kind of having to function as a soldier, but you're not. But worse than that would be like conscription, where you take people as slaves or you force them as underlings. You make them into soldiers, whether they want to or not, and you put them in your armor so they know what side they're on, whatever. But they have no choice in the matter. They're pressed into service. Okay, people do that to this passage. They press this into the service of their theology.
Yeah, they make it say what they want it to say.
Bingo! You're going to represent me. You're in my army. You're on my side now. You do what I say. You look like I tell you to look. You sound like I tell you to sound. As silly, as metaphorical as that is, you literally can make it sound how you want it to sound when you translate.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have an added historical problem that we're speaking English, and most people are familiar with that are going to be hearing this are speaking English. And if they have any exposure to the Bible or scripture or ideas surrounding this verse, they are exposed to a translation tradition.
Mm-hmm.
As odd as that sounds, it's not really all that odd. The Bibles, there's no such thing as a Bible that's been produced, as far as I know, without the help of money. And most Bibles, the very first one, was produced with the idea.
What was the name of that?
The King James Version in English, but
the original. It's way before the King James Version.
Well, you have different versions. You have the Vulgate. The
Latin Vulgate. It was the first ever printed. I'll look it up anyway.
Yeah.
So nothing to do with that.
No. That was a German Bible, the Gutenberg Bible.
Yeah.
So great. That's an example. It's not in English, right? So the English translation philosophy goes back to, I don't know, like 1200 something like this. I can't remember. And William Tyndale did some of that work, and then it got picked up by the KJV, and the King James Version it dominated the English language for a while. It's a beautiful version, actually. They did it to call it. It's a classic. It's a lot of its translations are timeless. However, a lot of it was based on later manuscripts. They added some of their ideas, and then you have some of the archaisms of English that get put in, right? So you have some bad texts as a basis, because all, scripture, what we have is a Bible. If you're holding a Bible or looking at it, it's a copy of a copy of a copy. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying, when I say the phrase, it's a copy of a copy of a copy, people associate that with the wrong-headed argument that
then it's wrong.
That's right. That the transmission of text is impossible. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, okay, I'm just saying that it's a process of copying. I'm not commenting on whether or not that process is faulty or not. I think the process is pretty damn good. I would, lay my life down on a lot of these decisions made by, this process or scribes in this process. So I'm not knocking it. However, it's a reality. So we have to answer multiple problems with this text. One, if an author insists on communicating with puns, we can't translate all of them unless we lengthen the text and we put the first intended possible meaning, the second intended possible meaning, and the third intended possible meaning, or however many there are lined up. Most people don't do that. They want either a literal version, so as close as they can word to word, or they want a dynamic equivalence. But both of those translation philosophies, that one's called formal equivalence, like try to make it sound just like it is word for word, and dynamic
sometimes it wouldn't make sense if you literally did it word for word.
Which is what happens, which is why there's a case for translations like the NET, the NIV. These are dynamic equivalents. Guys, we got to say what it was intending to say. Right?
Which says what it was intended to say.
So it has its own problems. but I'm actually saying this particular problem, the problem of puns, it's an even more headache of a problem, and it transcends the issue. You're doing a good job talking through this for me. It helps me. It transcends the issue of formal equivalence, exactly as it was word for word, or dynamic equivalence, what they intended to mean. The reason it transcends it is because which meaning do you translate? Mm-hmm. Now,
what determines how you translate it?
That's exactly right. We've gone past the question of how to translate into how many or what components.
Translation.
Yeah. So another way to say that is how many components do we bring from the original into the former? If somebody uses puns, you're kind of done for. Isaiah is commissioned. Most students of Isaiah will say that Isaiah actually began his work in chapter 6. He was commissioned in chapter 6. 1 through 5 discuss a lot of the breakdown of Judah and the reign of after the reign of Uzziyahu. But many would say Isaiah, son of Amos, a young priest, able to be in the temple, is commissioned in the temple in chapter 6. What is he commissioned with? He is commissioned with a riddle. Problem number one, like God's like, who will go for us?
I will.
He's like, Hanani, Shulachani, here I am, send me. He's like, okay, here's your message, right? And
it's going to make no sense to you.
Exactly. It's gobbledygook. The message is nonsense. The message is an absurdity. Have ears, but don't go on hearing. Use ears, but don't hear. You have eyes and don't see. Have a heart, but don't understand. It's like, what? How long do I say this stuff? Keep saying it until all their cities lie in ruin and everything's decimated. Don't stop saying it. Don't say it until, another way to read Isaiah 6 is don't say it. Don't stop saying it until you're the last man on the earth. Which is like, what? So we're now 53, or no, I'm sorry. I don't want to do, we're now 47 chapters later. Okay. Didn't want to do math. We're 47 chapters after chapter 6. We're in 53. And he constantly uses Hebrew roots. He takes advantage of the Hebrew language, which is a radical language. Basically, their roots are letters. They're consonants, which are typically tri-roots, 3-root words. Okay, and you can take these radical roots, and you can permutate them or change them a little bit. And
just slightly.
You can get 7 to 12 different verbs from one root. From that same root, you can typically get nouns, you can get adjectives, and you can even get adverbs. Yeah, adverbs, So very interesting that one root can have different flavors. Mm-hmm. When someone is writing with puns, they can make these things work together, right? And so a lot of background, getting into it, touching it now. Okay, so verse 6.
So are these the original consonants, and then this is the Hebrew?
So here's now you've asked a more interesting question, which is we've touched the transformation, we've touched the translation philosophy problem. I'm going to try to show you a version where you can see this verse and see how the problem gets even worse based on what you pointed out. And that's actually helpful that you said that, Peter. So let's look at let's see this one.
I'm going to make it even more complicated.
So what disappeared?
Everything except the
letters.
Hebrew. Yeah.
So what you'll note, well, this is Hebrew, so these are the consonants.
Yeah, everything except the Hebrew disappeared.
Yeah, so what you have prior, okay, this is actually what was written in the scroll.
Yes.
Not all the dots.
Correct. And that changed what it said.
This is okay. Okay, you have this problem. I'm going to show you that this is useful. So I'm glad. All right, watch. Let me do this right here. We will now have to draw. Okay, so take a look at that. Okay, and we're going to show the problem that we're facing with this verse. Mm-hmm. We have not just this verse, but multiple verses. Okay, so we're going to look at. Let's make that heavier. Okay. Okay. Now. We have two letters.
Yes.
What we're going to imagine is that between those letters is some kind of vowel. Okay?
And it can be any vowel.
Can be any vowel.
Okay.
Or vowels.
Okay.
Because sometimes we have diphthongs that are complicated vowels. Whatever. What word is that?
It could be bar. It could be... I don't know if B-O-R is a word, but
bar.
But yeah, I don't know if bird. Oh, I mean, it could be bear because it can be numerous.
That's right.
Vowels.
Because we have the
problem.
We have this problem.
Now B-E-A-R.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Now watch this. Okay, you're exactly right. So I'm going to write that there. Okay, because we have the possibility of diphthongs, which you pointed out. B-E-A-R. But now watch this problem. What is this word? English.
B-A-R-E. Yep.
How do you pronounce this word?
Bear.
How do you pronounce this word?
Bear.
But what does what does this one mean?
Animal.
What does this one mean?
To have on you, to hold, to bear witness, to.
So which one is this?
Present animal.
Okay, and this one?
To bear witness.
Okay. Or carry or lift, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is. It starts to get really, really problematic. We have bear, bar, beer,
boar.
This doesn't. Okay, and all we have is this in the scroll. Now we have now we get more help because English lost a lot of its conjugation, and you do get a lot of help from Hebrew, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes this is even worse. What if the author wants to exploit that ambiguity?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're there. Now we've seen some of that problem. Okay, we can see how complicated that is. Let's go back. So I'm just going to give a quick translation, and then we'll break it down. Cool, and let's use this right here so that people can have the benefit of a big arrow. Kulanu, all of us. Katson, like sheep, all of us like sheep. Ta'inu, we have gone astray or erred. All of us like sheep have gone astray or erred. So we could say all of us, kulanu, okay, and this word captures, it's everybody. At this point, the question is the speaker just talking about Israel? Is he just talking? So watch. Remember, we drew this before. Again, we have the idea that you have this speaker, who's part of us, which is the speaker is part of a group of messengers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are also a part of the group of Israel, right?
And then where was Isaiah in there?
But yeah, exactly. He's the speaker, but he's also in the messengers, gotcha. Israel. And then the question becomes: are they a part of? Are the Gentiles ever included in us? What I'm drawing here with this, with these circles, is the question of
who is we?
Who is we?
Oh,
our, us. Okay, and at this point, this is being really explicit. The subject is being reiterated twice in Hebrew because kulanu is us. Okay, ta'inu. It says again. It conjugates it and says again. We did this. All of us. We have gone astray. All of us have gone astray. Well, how have we gone astray? we've gone astray like sheep go astray or err.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When you think of a sheep erring or going astray, think of the telos, the finality, the outcome and the result. Is it going to go good for that sheep?
No.
Okay, so if you think also as well, modern times the land is incredible. We have terraformed to such a degree with suburbs, neighborhoods, roadway systems.
Yeah, it used to be incredibly rough
infrastructure.
terrain.
That's exactly right. And so even humans had trouble traveling between city to city, so you can damn well bet that a sheep that goes astray is done with. Okay, there are recorded Roman and Greek writings of travelers who have to go by areas where wolves, for example, get a taste for humans, and they're filled with skeletons and bones, and so a sheep is just what a dainty dish. Now, all of us like sheep have gone astray. Not good for us. Not good for us. It does beg the question, having gone astray, will there be a sheep that has to pay the price or take our place? Partly not like, how do you say this? Because this makes it sound like, and this is what we're going to get
like if one sheep was able to get attacked and completely satisfy a herd of wolves, none of the other sheep would get eaten. Like that one satisfied all of them.
And there, your metaphor helped me because it made the one doing the devouring, the wolves. Mm-hmm. Let's stick with your metaphor. And we're going to run into problems with Christians based on your metaphor. So now you can be the bad guy. Now, Kulanu, Katson, Tainu. We all like sheep have gone astray. Okay, yeah, it's dangerous for us. We're threatened. Okay, threatened by what? We see. We'll just for now say that the thing to focus on, the very act of our going astray, is what puts us in that dangerous place.
And they're our own way.
That's right. Now, the next part is, okay, but we're not sheep. We're people. Ish le darko paninu. Each man, each person, which would include women here, okay, it is a singular masculine, but because it would include, for instance, it's like I don't know the grammatical term for this, but it essentially like propagates a conditional with, it's intended to be read as a universal. Anybody is the way you should read it, okay, or all of us, anybody you could point out. Each individual, lay darko to his own way, each individual to his own way, which would then say each individual is individually responsible. Each individual to his own way, paninu, has turned to his own way. The word paninu is a verb that is pana, that comes from pan, which is related to the word panium, which is face.
Okay. We
have faced our own way, which means we've turned our back on Yah's way, God's way. Okay, that would be what that's what's being pointed out, because the servant is Yahweh's servant. He hasn't turned his back on Yahweh's way. We have turned our back on Yahweh's way and gone our own way. Now, here's what's interesting is there's a kind of cleverness happening in Isaiah's mouth when he says, well, we've erred like sheep and we've turned to our each individual way.
We still go our own way.
That's right.
Even though we're sheep.
Okay, so the play on it is, if you can imagine this, it would say, it's alluding to the fact, well, one of the things that's unlike sheep, that's worse about us, is the internal nature of our individual coveting. Coveting dominates the work of Isaiah, and it's leprosy, it's death at work in us, it's the source of sin, it's the judgment based on fear, deception, and craving. This ought to be mine, and reaching to seize it and grab it. Okay, and we covet as individuals, but the interesting thing is it makes destruction multiplicative instead of additive. Are you familiar with that idea that something's multiplicative instead of additive? That the damage is exponential, not just one-to-one, right? Okay, so that would mean if we are, to the degree we err like sheep, we lead others astray as well. Okay,
and then they lead others astray, and they lead others
but
astray.
We also contribute to leading other sheep away by going our own way. So somebody could, if all they had was the first clause, say, well, I'm in the back of the line, it's so-and-so's fault that I went astray. But the second clause, each man, this is why the speaker's so explicit, I believe, ish le darko, to his own way, paninu, he has turned. And so what that says, oh, crap. It's not just, I can't just blame the leaders. I can't just blame the people in front of me. Now, to be fair and to be sure, there's a tension there. Because there are leaders, and the blame is laid chiefly at their feet. And there is a kind of inertia that's gained by all the sheep starting to go off a cliff. That first sheep that went off the cliff has got some strange culpability compared to one of the guys who can't even see anything but a sheep's ass who's in wave 7 about to go off the cliff. It's different. Okay. And yet, so this is a brilliant way to try to balance the tension between we're in a herd and we are individual coveters who are destructive. Okay. We move on to the second clause. And now we have the mention of Yah directly. Okay, Vayehovah Yah, okay, Yahweh. And Yahweh hifgia bo et avon kulanu. Here is a problem, and I'm going to draw this out because lest people think that it's just a personal opinion, I'm going to translate it how I would translate it. And he, Yahweh, has caused him, okay, to make atonement for the iniquity of us all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some of this has to do with the weird peculiarity of we have idioms in English, and they had idioms too. I'll give you an example. We could say eaten up with guilt or shame.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eaten up with shame.
Yeah.
I'm eaten up with guilt. Could we say I'm eaten up by guilt? We could. We don't, but we could.
Yeah.
Could we say I'm eaten up next to guilt?
No.
Suddenly it changed, right? Could we say I had eggs with
Guilt.
cheese?
With a side of guilt.
Yeah. Could we say, well, just with? Could I say I had eggs with cheese? Could we say I had eggs on cheese?
Literally, yes.
You could, but it's
yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay. They have idioms as well, but the first thing we're going to touch on, so we're going to go through two things. One, we're going to go through the verb itself. Two, we're going to go through the idiomatic usage, okay, of the preposition ba. All right? Preposition ba. Okay.
That right there?
Yeah, so where we are, so we can know where we are. Hifgia bo. Hifgia bo. Okay, so I'm going to write that out, and what we'll do is we'll do one in red. Okay, let's do that. So hifgia. Okay, and I'm going to do that H differently. What I'm going to do actually, so we can see that distinction, because red and green are opposites, it'll make our eyes pop, which is fun. We're going to say.
I hate when my eyes pop.
Okay, so watch this. Remember what I showed you? I showed you that you could see it without the vowels. You could just see the consonants. That's what was originally written on the scroll. The vowels were supplied later by scribes, which is great. The vowels are awesome. They're helpful. Okay, now, this green thing, okay, and actually I need to write that as red so that we can see. Okay. You can see the green, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The green is the radical, the 3-letter radical.
Okay.
Okay?
Just the consonants.
That's right. The hey is added to change that radical, to change its meanings. Or change its meaning. Okay. The yod is there because of that conjugation as well. And I'm going to put the dots as well in red. So we have hif, gia, and we have that there. Okay. Hif, gia. Okay. Hif, gia is the verb we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is not a intransitive verb here. It's a transitive verb, meaning it has a direct object. The direct object is in him, this phrase, bo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, through the means of him, in him. Now, here's what this word means, all right? Paga is the root. You see the root there?
Paga, yep.
Oh, sorry. We're going to go paga. Okay. It means to meet, encounter, okay, meet, encounter, or fall upon, because in an intense meeting, it can mean to fall upon, whatever. Okay, fall upon, okay, which can also mean attack in battle, right? However, that is when it's just in the call form, okay? All right? We can actually, just so you know that I'm not making this up, we can see it, and we can see it in the call form, okay? To meet or to light upon, Okay, sorry. And just so we can
To
look at it,
me, let upon.
we can compare it and just take a peek at it. That's the call form right here. So if you see this right here, that's the call form. This vowel, you see it? Paga. Okay, let's get out of that. I'm gonna close that. Get out of this, and we're gonna close that. And that means to meet, encounter, fall upon, attack, possibly varying shades. However, when we put this hey here, okay, when we put this hey here, it's a form called the hifil. The hifil form of the verb. It means to cause someone to meet. So in the hifil, it means to cause, when you say cause someone to meet, you've changed the semantics of the verb. And what it means is to intercede. When you have two parties that are not meeting, and you cause those parties to meet, and you skip between them, you mediate or intercede. Understand?
Yep.
Okay. That's this word. Now, look at how it's translated by most people in English.
Let fall on here the iniquity of us all.
Okay, let fall on him the iniquity of us all. That's the LEB. Let's take a look and see, for example, the NET, what it does with it. Okay.
6. But the Lord caused the sin of all of us to attack him.
Now, what's funny is at least the NET takes into account the fact that this hey in front of the root is causative. So the idea of let fall is a joke. Okay, so let isn't an option because
allowed.
Yeah, it's not allowed or permitted. It's to cause.
Cause.
To cause. That's the whole point of the lemma, or that's the whole point of the binyan. The system. It transforms the verb into a causative active. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it would be fine if this were a one-off. Here's what's so weird about this. Okay. Why do they want it to be causes to attack him? It is because of the belief in penal substitutionary atonement. It's the idea that they understand when you ask them what happens in atonement. First off, these translators are translating in English. Are they Jews translating in English? Or are they Christians?
Christians.
They're Christians. They already have a belief that's now become established since around the 11th century, starting with Anselm, who started to teach the idea of satisfaction theory of atonement. He came up with the satisfaction theory of atonement. By the time we get to Calvin and Zwingli and other people and Luther, there is this idea of guilt or imputation, absorption, and this penal aspect of satisfaction theory. The satisfaction theory says God's
be injured or punished too.
Or a better way to say it is, Anselm taught, God is a lord, a feudal lord who's offended, and you have to restore his honor. But then that evolved into God is a just judge, a feudal lord, and who has honor, and he must. This is the idea that's philosophical. He must punish to maintain his status of being just. Makes sense within Western philosophy and a feudal system. Doesn't have anything to do with the Torah. So we have it's translated in this milieu this time in the KJV, and now we have this translation history, and we're kind of stuck with it. But we're not stuck with it. Do you want to know why? And this is what's so incredible about verse 6. It's the same damn word in the same conjugation in the same chapter, 6 verses later. Isaiah 53:12. Let's take a look at it for a second, just so we can see it. Okay, we have numbered with the sinners. Watch this. Ha! Right here. Vela poshim, the transgressors, yafgia.
Made intercession.
Now watch. Let's stick to what they said. Let's stick to the NET, because the NET makes more sense. A New English translation makes more sense of how to translate it. That it's causative, and that it can mean fall upon or meet, encounter, like a chance encounter, but also can mean attack. Cause him to attack.
Yeah.
Caused our sins to attack him. That's how they use the verb. Watch this. That would mean the servant. Okay. Either because it's weird because we have a preposition for, not but. For transgressors, he caused him to attack. Caused the servant to attack.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense. Because as it is translated here, as it's been translated in the, let's see, can we see that the Young's literal is an old one too? See, and for transgressors he intercedeth. Very old. That's an old translation. Let's look at the King James version. Okay. He made intercession for the transgressors. And the King James version, okay, hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. This says laid on him. This doesn't make sense, okay? So the issue is that we're getting further and further away, removed from the original context of Isaiah as a great work in Hebrew, and we're more concerned with a lot of our translation philosophies and systematic Christian thinking that we've inherited. But it is okay that it's a process of inheritance and working through it, but we just need to say, is it the right context to figure this out? And I have a note here that I save on verse 6 so that people don't think I'm being crazy by translating. The way I would translate the Hebrew is, now I'm going to touch the second part, the idiomatic preposition of ba. Ba can mean in, at, or through the means of.
Okay.
Watch. I wrote to you in pen.
Okay.
You don't say to me, how did you fit into a pen? Okay.
I wrote to you inside a pen.
I wrote you in pen and ink. Were you divided? How were you in the pen and the ink at the same time? Okay. No, it means through the means of, or instrumentality. Okay. This means Yahweh caused him, or caused intercession to be accomplished in him, and between which two parties?
Between the servant and us.
It's actually, well, he, as a mediator, he's on both sides. But this is interesting. This is speaking of the threat of iniquity, or avon. He's actually pressing in
between the iniquity and us.
And us. That's exactly.
Yeah.
And we see. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Misunderstood you.
We see examples like this in Jeremiah, where literally somebody has to intercede and they have to come between a threatening party and another party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here, the thing that is threatening us is avon. It's iniquity. Mm. And obviously, we're threatened if kulanu katzon, if we're all like sheep, then we're not very smart and we're not very strong. A sheep on its own, there's no action movie that starts with a sheep on its own. Okay, it's not going to do that. Okay, maybe it's a tragedy or a comedy. It's not an action movie, right? We're not able to act against anything as a sheep. We can't defeat that threat. And so in this sense, he's interceding for us. Mm-hmm. Yahweh caused him to make intercession for us. He stood between our evil, willful sins. Iniquity is not an accidental sin.
Yeah.
Purposeful. He stood between our willful wickedness and us. And it was Yahweh's plan. See, this is the thing that is right in most of these translations. They're trying to say Yahweh caused this, because Yahweh is the subject of the verb hifgia. So Yahweh is causing intercession to happen through the means of the servant. Mm-hmm. All right. Now this, by the way, this explores the relationship between Yahweh and the servant in the act of intercession being made. We don't yet know exactly how intercession happens, but we do in a way, because we know a little bit, because our verse prior was through stripes, through beating. Yep. Verse 4 says it looks like being sick or being injured or struck. So we know that there's a violent act happening. We don't have a whole lot of that context of what happens. But what we can say from this verse is, rightly translated, this verse directly says, Yahweh and the servant are in league together. Mm-hmm. More rightly, Yahweh is causing the behavior of the servant, not the behavior of the ones interacting with the servant.
Correct.
Yahweh is leading or causing the agenda and behavior of the servant, not the people who thought God cursed him, God struck him. This kind of, okay, great. So, kulano katsonteinu isla kopanino v'Yahweh hafgiyabo ervon kulano. And let's see if we have. So for this verse, I want to double check here, make sure that we've covered a lot of ground already. I just want to make sure that we don't leave anything out that could benefit or aid people. And
what is super interesting. Interesting. Many other things as well. Despite the fact that we all went our own way, we all turned away from the Lord, he still puts a servant between us and our iniquities.
Okay. And what you just did was demonstrate that the agenda of Yahweh
Was to save.
Was to save, to rescue. And before the act of saving, because saving is an action,
Heal.
is love.
Yeah.
It's compassion. Love for these people. It's compassion and love. Chesed would be the highest word in Hebrew, this loyal love, this deep compassion.
Even though you're walking away from me, I still love you. I'm still gonna
pursue you.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And it is through this, somehow the servant reveals, it is through this that the servant reveals the heart of Yahweh. And you're going to see a lot of overlap with these verses, adjectives of the servant and Yahweh, and later verses and chapters that are right around each other. So an example is, this lines up with Isaiah 55, just 2 chapters later, where Yahweh says, let the evil one forsake his ways and the wicked one his ways, for I will abundantly pardon for. And he anticipates an argument regarding justice. He anticipates people like, why would you freely forgive people? And this is where we get the famous phrase, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways above it. Just as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts above your thoughts. And watch this word, my ways above your ways. They have turned away from Yahweh's way to their own way. But what are Yahweh's ways? We know it from Isaiah 55. It is to abundantly and freely forgive. And then when we move from 55 into 56, he looks after the eunuch and the weak and the nobody. Then we get to 57, and now we have a re-description of the servant. The guy who was crushed. Yahweh says he actually strangely shochenes or shechina, or he's strangely present and camps with the one who's crushed. Okay, and the servant is this odd fulfillment of that. Okay, so we remember we can compare this to verse 12. We have verse 6, and that's right. I did want to say, that's right. I want to look at the note for this verse, verse 6. The note in this verse is one that I say because if, people who study Hebrew exegesis or respect it, students of Hebrew exegesis, you will, you're going to find a lot of reverence for a rabbi, translator, a scholar, named Rashi. Okay. Rashi is like, a lot of people will say, well, I disagree with what you said. And you say, well, Rashi said it. Well, if Rashi said it, never mind. That's kind of the attitude. Okay. Rashi interacts with this passage, and he understands this passage significance as a Jew. Now, Rashi's writing way, way, way later, but it is at least helpful that somewhere around the time that Christianity was going in this other direction associated with the feudal system and whatever, you have somebody who has access to the text, and this is a competing view. And he says, Hifkiabo, that's his comment. He does commentary on the scriptures, on the writings, and he's going to comment on just what we commented on, Hifkiabo. This is his comment is essentially he accepted the servant's prayers, and he was appeased concerning the iniquity of us all. It was efficacious. He made atonement for us through intercession or through prayer, through offering. Okay, and on account of it, he didn't destroy the world. And so that's the way he understands it. Now he's adding a lot of elements, dynamic elements. I don't disagree with the elements that he adds. I would say the context doesn't quite allow, permit. I don't think the context quite permits as far as Rashi goes regarding the world and its destruction and intercession. But in a way it does. You could read that by going to Isaiah 38 and different things. But my point is just strictly, he saw Hifkiabo and he understood, it's to make intercession. But that's not saying, well, this is a Jew versus Christian thing, because the Christians say the same verb in the same conjugation 6 verses later in the same chapter is he made intercession. So it's yeah. Okay, that's just kind of a note, an annotation on that. Do you have any other questions about this verse?
How were you gonna?
Never mind. Goodbye.
How are you gonna make me the bad guy when I said it was the wolves eating the single sheep?
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to the NET to prove this point.
Okay.
And this is dark to me. I try to this part for me is a little emotional. So far, I don't know what minute mark we're at, but everybody watching, I've been pretty non-emotional. So don't try to at least separate this latter half from this first half. Okay. I don't feel as stoic about this. All of us wandered like sheep. Each of us had strayed off his own path. Okay. I don't know why they said strayed off, because
they chose to
it
go
literally
our
means
own
they
way.
went their own way. I think that's a poor translation. But this idea, but Yahweh caused the sin of all of us to attack him. Okay. This has been embraced. Now, this is the strongest. Well, no, it's not actually, isn't it? It's not the strongest. In a way, I see why the NET does this. The NET is smart. Okay, the NET can actually get away with this because they could still blame our sin and not God.
Okay.
Because God caused it. We don't know how. It doesn't say he controlled everything, but he caused our sin to be the instrument to attack him, not God attacking him. Here's the point, though. When it says let fall on him, and you have things like verse 5, at the chastisement, the punishment he endured, okay, his chastisement of our peace, they say God punished him. Just very resolutely, the way that this is read is God punished Yeshua. So the NET here is a little different. Let's just take I wonder if we've got some examples. I'm curious about it because I don't really read the ESV. I have a feeling the ESV would do something like that. I'm not entirely certain. I'd like to know what the ESV says. So I'm just going to pull it up on my phone for a second so that I can, because a lot of people use the ESV and versions like it. And what we can do is...
What is that, English Standard?
English Standard, that's right. So I just pulled up the ESV. I opened it up in my EU version app, and I'm going to hop over to 53, verse 6 in the ESV. Okay. We all like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and Yahweh has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Laid on him the iniquity of us all. This is the important part. The punishment that the servant experiences is not God's judgment of him.
Yeah.
Yet this is embraced by millions and millions of Christians. They believe, and they would bring ideas like election into it. They would say, how special, God, how much you love me. God, you must love me so much that you punished your own son for my sins. It's literally what people pray and say, and it's perversity. It's disgusting. And it's again, guys, sorry, I'm going to be a little emotional here. It is celestial child abuse. It has, apart from all that stuff, it's just not what the Torah teaches. It has nothing to do with how atonement happens. People who have this kind of thought are just dumbfounded. They think atonement can't happen without punishment. They're dumbfounded that the Torah is filled with examples of how come incense makes atonement. You can't punish it. How come flour makes atonement in Numbers 5? You can't punish it. How come gold makes atonement in the end of Numbers? You can't punish it. How come rats and tumors, gold replicas make atonement? You can't punish it. How come a snake that's held up it's endless. The means by which atonement are made have nothing to do with punishment.
Yep.
They have to do with avoiding punishment.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do with turning punishment away. And the idea that the servant is judged in the negative by the Father is hideous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's like that's the one guy who didn't abandon him.
Yep.
And then when
he was all alone and he asked.
That's right. And even in Psalm 22 says,
you are with me.
Psalm 22, people want to, but Psalm 22. Psalm 22 says, it opens, my God, why have you forsaken me? Mm-hmm. But it ends with, you have seen the suffering of your servant. You have not turned your face away from him.
Exactly.
He did not look away or abandon him. Okay.
You're not the one punishing me.
That's right. He handed him over to them to judge him, but that's not his judgment.
No.
And this is the point. Verse 12 is the judgment of Yahweh of the servant. Verse 12 says, Yahweh judged him with the resurrection. Actually, verse 10 is the beginning of the judgment. Verse 12 is the end to end. Yahweh's judgment of the servant is, no, my servant shall live.
You're alive.
Like you guys said, he should die. Oh, really? So even his own apostles abandoned him and let him die. So like even Annas the high priest, the father of Caiaphas, said he should die. Oh, even Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin said he should die. Oh, even Pilate in Rome said he should die. Oh, even the crowd said crucify him.
I say yes.
Oh, even the servant says he should die. You're all wrong.
Yep.
You used all your authority in heaven and on earth incorrectly. My son shall live. Therefore, I'm going to give all authority in heaven and on earth to my son. This is actually how that works. Yes, my love. I'm filming something, baby.
Can I use the tablet to write Hebrew?
In a minute. Yeah, I'm almost done with this. Yes, not right now. I will do that shortly. I love you so much.
Love you.
Okay. So that would be like, thank you. You just don't get Torah. They don't get Torah. Torah meaning Torah is the word for it's a word that means instruction, but it tends to be associated with the first 5 books and by extension, the written word. That's my daughter's name is Torah. It would be like me taking my daughter and saying, you know what? I love you so much and I want you in my life. And you're so filthy and such a sinner. I'm going to beat the shit out of my daughter. I'm going to make her bleed. I'm going to torment her. I'm actually going to hold her guilty. I'm going to count her forensically guilty for the evil that you have done.
And not just me, everyone.
Everybody! I'm going to put it on her. I'm going to humiliate her, strip her naked, beat her. This is what happened to Mashiach. The idea, this to me is like, when I think about the unseen powers who create misinformation, Hasatan, the enemy, the liar, when he lies, he speaks his native language. I think about these guys fucking slam dunking and high-fiving each other, that they got people to praise God for agreeing with verse 4. Verse 4 says, we thought he was struck by God. But verse 6, which is the verse we're studying, says, no, actually, God was at work through the servant making atonement for your iniquity. And what was your worst iniquity you could have performed? Killing my son! It's like, I can't, I am getting emotional. So it's like...
no, it's good.
So that's my take on it. So now that you have that, I can just say it plainly. The idea that how could one sheep save us from the wolves? They could throw themselves to the wolves, right? And let the wolves devour them. But in their version, God is the wolf. God is the hungry judge who literally can't forgive. Though we do not have very many appeals to mystery in Scripture. You have a lot of appeals to mystery from theologians. Mm-hmm. Be distrustful of an appeal to mystery. If somebody has an entire system and they're trying to systematically walk you through it, and 5 minutes into their system, they talk about mystery, be like, I don't want to listen to you anymore. I'm done. 5 minutes into their system, a lot of these guys appeal to the mystery of God. Here's the mystery. The mystery is, the Torah teaches it's an abomination to punish an innocent man for the guilt of another. The mystery of the gospel. No, it's not a mystery. He didn't do it. He never does it. It's hideous. He never does that. He would never do that. Do you want to know a mystery, though? One of the only mysteries that I find in Scripture is a couple chapters after this. I will freely pardon them and forgive them their sins. Why would you do that? Because my thoughts aren't your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways. You don't get me. I am mysterious in that way. Well, what makes you mysterious? That you would just freely forgive sinners.
That you cannot understand.
That's right. And so what we say is, no, God, that's not really what you meant. There's a system where you had to deal with sin and punish people, because then you wouldn't be allowed to be my feudal definition of just. It's wild. To me, it is wild that people can end up creating a theology where they agree with the abusers of the Messiah in verse 4 and disagree with Yahweh, the Father of the servant, in verse 6. It is wild. Now, I will say, there are textual problems we're going to run into when we get to verse 10. Mm-hmm. That some people are going to be like, okay, this guy in this video, I can't wait till we get to verse 10. I can't wait till we get to verse 10 either. It would be great. Okay, so...
what is time when he's buried with the rich?
No, I believe that's 9. I think that's 9. Okay. 10 is finally when Yahweh is said to, where the speaker says what Yahweh thinks about the servant. We get an echo of it in verse 6, where we are like, oh, Yahweh is at work somehow through the servant and his strength. Verse 10 is Yahweh's judgment of the servant. Okay? Yeah. All right. So, any other questions?
I'm good.
Awesome. Praise God. All right. And